Hi everybody, welcome to Studio 64. My name's David. I've been searching the interzones for some more science, space and tech news to share with you. And I found this over at USA Today. Yes, last week's CrowdStrike outage was bad. The Sun has something worse planned. This sounds a bit of a worry. Yes, I called it Clown Strike because it's like if clowns went on strike, the whole circus had come tumbling down. A big top would collapse, which is ironically exactly what happens. Dear, oh dear. All right, so it has been 1 week since the world got a preview of what happens when vital tech systems suddenly go down. Grounded flights, postponed surgeries, and disrupted 911 call centers worldwide. But experts say the chaos that ensued from a botched CrowdStrike software update was just a fraction of what could happen as a result of natural disasters or cyber attacks. In one doomsday scenario raised in the wake of last week's outage, a solar storm could wipe out internet access for weeks. It's an alarming possibility that the most pessimistic scientists say is an eventual certainty. One day the sun will send a massive magnetic field towards Earth that could take down the internet. Now, as usual, I'll leave the link to the main article below the video so you can pop in, check out these embedded links, go for a bit of a deeper dive if you want beyond the main article. It makes for an interesting read, believe me. Yeah, very, very interesting. And you notice that all of a sudden they've stopped talking about Microsoft in this when it was only Microsoft machines that went down? Interesting. Mac and Unix users were not affected. That's because Mac and Unix share the same digital ancestor. I think with Mac it was BSD Unix and Linux, of course, Unix as well. Fascinating. Interesting stuff. The catastrophe could happen at any time, but like other looming disasters, a devastating solar storm remains a constant low likelihood risk. It's not something I worry about for tomorrow, but it's on the radar. That won't surprise me if and when it happens, said Douglas Leonard, an astronomy professor at San Diego University. It's really ultimately up to the sun to decide. There you go. NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory captured the image of a solar flare on May the 10th. A subset of extreme ultraviolet light highlights the extremely hot material in flares. Yeah, interesting, isn't it? You'd imagine, like, most older people like me could survive if the internet went down for a while, you know. You'd imagine all these other people out there going, I can't go on TikTok and behave like a raving lunatic. Ah! Yeah, fascinating, isn't it? Yeah. Some people will be devastated by it, you know. As much as I live a lot of my life online, I'm old enough to remember when we didn't have it, so I can still survive. Fascinating, isn't it? I can still remember how to fish. I can still remember how to, you know, survive without it. Yeah, because I used to do a lot of, when I was young, I used to go camping a lot with my parents. So even though that's not exactly prepper, at least I know what to do, and at least I know how to entertain myself if the interzones were down. It's called books. Yes, the book, the portable analog entertainment unit, doesn't require batteries. Yes, funny about that. How on earth can a solar storm cause an outage on Earth? Yes, solar activity has been ramping up lately after an extended period of minimal activity, Leonard said. We've seen the effects in recent months. Coronal mass ejections, or CMEs, caused a stunning display of northern lights across large parts of the US, much farther south than they are usually visible. Yeah, that's another thing that people are screaming about. Climate change is causing solar flares. No, it's not. You moron. Well, you think the climate change on Earth, I can guarantee you there are other suns out in the universe that have solar flares. So you're saying climate change on Earth causes, you know, people say this to me all the time, and the solar flare activity is increased because of the climate changes. You're retarded. What, you're going to say that a sun, you know, 45 million light years from planet Earth, it's got solar flares, and that's caused by climate change on Earth? Good God, give me the phone number of your dealer, because whatever you're on, I need a good snort of it. Jesus, unbelievable. Yes, the sun, it has an 11-year cycle where it goes through maximum and minimum. Shannon Schmoll, director of the Abrams Planetarium at Michigan State University, told USA Today the results in the number of spots seen on the sun. Yes, this results, in the number of sunspots seen on the sun. Sunspots result from areas of the sun that have stronger magnetic fields. Yeah, I did a video on magnetic fields the other day, on Earth's magnetic field. Just check it out in the channel. And we've discovered an extrasolar planet, apparently, that has its own magnetic field. It's not within the Goldilocks zone, the habitable zone of this solar system. But it was really interesting to see that we've actually detected one in an extrasolar planet. That's like what I'm saying about solar flares. Guarantee there's a sun out there with solar flares. It's not climate change. Dear Lord, And this 11-year cycle, the 11-year cycle has been going on since way before mankind turned up. Guarantee you there were maximum, minimum solar flares long before humans are on this planet. So don't tell me it's climate change. Bloody digital dickheads. When the sun's magnetic field bursts, clouds of highly charged particles are released and can go in any direction, known as a CME. When the particles are headed directly towards Earth, that's when we have a problem, Leonard said. Because of the way magnetic fields impact electrical fields, the changing magnetic field can induce a current in our electrical system so large it could fry transformers and cause a blackout and disrupt our communications and GPS systems. Yeah, very interesting. And people don't think of things like, when the power goes out, your supermarkets, you won't be able to get food. They do have generators, I know that, but it depends on how long these CMEs, these solar flares last for. Yeah. It's like a nuclear bomb going off in an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse, apparently. The unlikely circumstances will all have to align perfectly to cause an outage. Some experts have dubbed an internet apocalypse. Now, this has happened before, and it threw the telegraph system into disarray. In 1859, a British scientist named Richard Carrington observed an intense brightening of the sun. Now, though coronal mass injections weren't yet understood, modern experts believe the event he saw was the flare that preceded a series of extremely intense CMEs that headed directly for Earth. In the following days, the northern lights were seen as far south as Cuba, according to NASA. Interesting. At the same time, the telegraph system, or the Victorian internet, went on the fritz. Some telegraph offices even caught fire. Just as a side note, if you're old enough to remember telex machines, like typewriters, and they'd magically start typing things on paper. And this was the modern, or back then, the modern equivalent. And this typewriter would start spitting out these messages, the modern equivalent of the telegraph system, where back in the day you'd have somebody listening to the message coming through and they would handwrite it. Then we got telegraphs to replace that. And then, of course, now we have email and everything else. So, yeah, it's very interesting. A similar storm today could have a catastrophic effect, NASA said a decade ago. More recently, in March of 1989, a less severe geomagnetic storm knocked out power for about 6 million people in Montreal for hours. Some parts of the northeastern US and Sweden also lost power. And in October of 2003, a series of solar storms hit Earth around Halloween. That would have got the conspiracy theorists going, wouldn't it? That would have been entertaining. Bit of a conspiracy theorist myself, but I don't take it too seriously. I just, it's kind of like a Loch Ness monster, There might be something there, there mightn't be something there, but, it's a bit of fun to creep yourself out thinking about it. It's interesting, isn't it? Yes, and the solar storm hit Earth around Halloween, dazzling people in the US as far south as Texas and Florida with a northern light show. Now, according to the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, but it also caused serious disruptions or damages to satellites, GPS, radio communication systems. Now, flights between North America and Asia going over the North Pole were disrupted. A Japanese satellite was destroyed beyond repair, and science groups in Antarctica had full communications blackout for several days. That could be a concern, especially for our scientists down there. Okay, so how likely is an internet blackout after a solar storm? Now, like the big one, earthquake expected to hit California sometime in the future, a solar event so large it could wipe out the internet for an extended period of time is an inevitability, but still an unlikely one right now, Leonard said. Yes. Now, it could happen tomorrow, or it could be another 200 years, he said, adding that it's nearly impossible to predict with certainty. Now, some experts believe that based on the sun's cycle of activity, there's about a 1% chance a year that a Carrington event-like storm will happen. Now, according to a 2021 study published by Sangeetha Abdul-Jyothi, a computer science expert at the University of California at Irvine, there's a 1.6 to 12% chance that it could happen within the next decade. Yeah, and that would not surprise me. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if it did. Yeah, George Mason University astronomy professor Peter Becker narrows the time frame. Now, the internet was simply not designed to handle this level of communication interference, and so consequently is considered a very soft type of infrastructure, Becker said in a university news release last year. Hence, the period from 2024 to 2028 is a time when the entire internet could conceivably be knocked out for a period of weeks to months in the event of a really extreme solar flare. Yeah. So, no more ordering your alcohol over the interzones. You'll have to make it yourself. God, you're a Catholic, David. Fair dinkum. Now, there hasn't been a large solar storm event in the past couple of decades to test our relatively new internet infrastructure, while it has increasingly dominated everyday necessities that range from treating patients in hospitals to paying for groceries at a supermarket. Now, most infrastructure is held together by duct tape and chewing gum at the end of the day, Leonard said. Yep. I've even seen people's computers, their laptops, the lids held on with a bit of duct tape. Yeah, so I would not be surprised if we've got some server farms out there. The cloud, Oh my God, there's too many people logging onto the servers at once. Spit on it for a minute, will you? It's overheating. Don't care. Spit on it. Just for God's sake, do something. Yeah, okay. Yeah. We'll get the little bit of wire and tighten it up a bit, Fascinating. Yeah, I saw one of these running jokes many years ago that was people were concerned about, cybersecurity. And, we've got that down, Pat. What about rodents chewing through the cables in the data center? Well, we have something called anti-cyber attack technology for that. Oh, really? What's that like? Known by its acronym, ACAT. So we'll get a cat to stop all... So this anti-cyber attack technology was so advanced that to stop the data cables being chewed, they got a cat. Fascinating. Can we prepare for this? And completely stupid at the same time, David. Shut up. Yes, can we prepare for this? The good news is that any major solar activity that could direct a coronal mass ejection toward Earth would be detectable with some lead time. It could take up to a few days for the charged particles to make their way to Earth's surface, Leonard said. Now, during this time, emergency officials could start to prepare the power grid. It's kind of like what Leonard's mother used to do with a large thunderstorm that could cause power surges was approaching, he said. She would go around the house unplugging things. Yeah. If we got that sort of information through, best thing to do is disconnect everything from the power, shut down your computer devices, and wait for it to finish. Yeah. Shut your interzone boxes off. Just go off grid for a few days. Yeah. However long it lasts, because eventually things will come back up again, and all that sort of thing. So definitely a good idea. Similar analogy, but I can understand exactly where they're coming from, and that's what I'd be doing. If we had a warning that a huge event was coming our way, you'd effectively see the power grid kind of do what my mother did was. My mum was doing very locally in our house, and that is you would basically take the power grid offline, save the transformers, and save damage, Leonard said. Yeah, look at that. Day of chaos, how CrowdStrike disrupted 9/11 dispatches, hospitals, and flights. Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Check that story out. It's quite fascinating. The preparation may plunge people into rolling blackouts, so Leonard said it's wise to always think about what you do in an extended time without power. Now we have satellites orbiting the sun that constantly monitor activity that could impact Earth, he said. We're pretty good at knowing when something as big has happened on the sun, Leonard said. Yeah, really interesting. Really interesting indeed. Yeah, definitely time for me to grab a couple of generators, I think. and keep them there. And isn't it fascinating how people who were preppers were considered raving lunatics? I remember, as a side note, somebody in the 70s that my dad worked with resigned from the job that he was doing the same job as my dad, and he went and got a whole lot of baked beans and ammunition and guns. This is before Australia was, disarmed. And he ex-army stuff, because there were army surplus stores in the 70s all over Australia. So we went and got, tents, ammunition boxes, bought guns, bought ammunition, anything he could get his hands on, lots of baked beans and stuff like that, and bought a property and went and lived in a cave in the 70s, and everyone thought he was a little bit of a Lord Looney Tunes. And now I look at him and think, maybe not so much. Maybe he was onto something. Because you can see how the way the world's going, it's completely insane. And then all we need is one of these. All we need is one of these solar flares, these CMEs, and the next thing you know, people would turn into worse Karens than the ones during the coof where you'd be running out of toilet paper. This is what would happen. Human beings, it wouldn't take long for us to return to a complete animal state, as far as I'm concerned. It's quite fascinating, isn't it? All right, well, my name is David. Thanks for joining me for another Studio 64 Science, Space and Tech News update. I shall see you in the next one. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate it. If you're up for it, drop a comment down below the video, because I'd love to hear what you think. All right, take care, and as I always say, if you can't be good at it. And as I also always say,
fascinating, but quite impossible.